Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jordan here. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. If I haven't mentioned it before, I know I've posted a couple other videos. A merry belated Christmas, merry belated Thanksgiving, a happy New Year. If you watch this after January 1st, 2021, happy belated New Year. So today I am going to be talking about this, which is the Canon EOS RP. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, I've had this camera for probably about 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit more than that. And I will say for my first full frame mirrorless camera, this thing has blown me out of the water. There's just so many features that are packed into this system, and it's pretty ridiculous. So at the time when I purchased this, Canon had a Christmas sale going on, so it was $680 for the body itself, and then I bought a new adapter, which they have refurbished adapters on this. The body itself was refurbished, and then I purchased a new EF to EOS R mount adapter. They also sell the adapters refurbished, so if you're cool with buying refurbished, I would probably go that route. You'll save yourself a couple bucks. But all in all, I paid under $800 for the body and the mount itself, and then with shipping and stuff, I think it was like an extra $17 or something like that. So anyways. Now, being full frame and mirrorless is a huge plus. So the nice thing with the EOS RP is it's Canon's first mirrorless full frame body that they came out with, and then I think it was the EOS R, and then I believe the EOS RA was the third rendition of the full frame mirrorless systems that Canon came out with before the R5 and the R6. So if you're looking to buy just the body by itself, it's $9.99 on Canon's website, or you can buy the body with, I believe it's the 24 to 240 millimeter RF lens that comes with it. It's kind of like their kit lens. That's $1,300 new. I know during Christmas they were having some crazy deals on a brand new EOS RP body with a kit lens for $1,000, which is pretty insane when you really think about it. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into more pros and cons with this here, but so far I've been pretty impressed with this. So if you're looking to buy a refurbished body, they're $808 on Canon's website. Or you can pay $1,199 for a refurbished body and a 24 to 240 kit lens with that. And the RF glass, from what I understand, I haven't purchased a Canon RF piece of glass yet, but I do plan to pick up a 24 to 240 or a 24 to 105 in the near future. From what I understand, the Canon RF glass is probably some of the sharpest glass that you can purchase, so that's a plus. The only bad thing is you're switching from EF, if you own Canon already, you're switching from an EF mount to an RF mount, which, I mean, eventually what's going to happen, now don't quote me on this, but I'm thinking Canon's probably going to basically ease out of the EF mount lenses, unless you're just looking for like a T7, T8, I know that they just released the T8i this year too, so I honestly think that Canon is probably eventually going to move away from DSLRs entirely. I know I've probably said that before, but I guess time will tell. Now, with it being a full frame mirrorless camera, you get some pretty spectacular low light capabilities with that. So it goes from ISO 100 to 102,400. I will say 102,000 ISO on this camera. While it's good, but I mean you're getting a lot of noise at that high range of an ISO. It's expandable, so there's two different ISO levels. There's high 1 and high 2. High 2 is 102, 102,000, and high 1 I believe is 51,600 or 51,400, something like that. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're trying to expand your ISO up. As far as low light capabilities go, I found the sweet spot to be about 10,000 ISO, which I think is a really good medium. You're not getting a whole lot of grain, but it's also not super noisy. It's something that I have gone through and just kind of looked at a bunch. Me personally, I think 10,000's a perfectly fine number. You will have to use a little bit of denoise, but it's not as bad as like what you would get from a DSLR. So keep that in mind. So another thing with this body is you get 4K, which is cropped. I know everybody always is kind of like hating on the crop on the 4K, but I don't know what Canon's doing with that, so don't blame me. I think that the crop on this, which is a 1.6 times crop, isn't really terrible. So I mean, if you're shooting on a 50, you're basically getting an 80mm focal length, which isn't bad. My Canon EOS SL3 is, I believe, is a 2.6 times crop. So like right now, I am shooting on the EF24 or the EFS 24mm f2.8. And I'm shooting in 4K, and right now I would say the focal length comparative on this right now is probably somewhere around 60mm. So you're going from 24 and then you're using that crop to get a basically like a 60mm equivalent, which I think kind of sucks. But a 1.6 times crop isn't terrible. I can deal with that. So you also get 1080-60, 1080-30, and you have to download the firmware for the 24p. Super easy to do. Basically just go onto Canon's website, download the firmware, throw it onto a memory card, pop the memory card in, upload the firmware to the camera, and then you've got 1080 at 24p. So it's not a huge deal breaker. I know when this camera first came out, everybody was super upset that it didn't already have the 24p installed, which I don't blame them. My Canon EOS SL3 doesn't have 1080 24 either. I don't know what Canon did with that, because I know on the Canon EOS SL2 you get 4K 24 and you get 1080 at 24, 30, and 60, which didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I also don't make cameras, so. So in this you get a full frame mirrorless camera, which comes with a 26 megapixel image sensor. They use the Digic 8 Plus processor, the Digic 8 processor, which is also in the Canon EOS Rebel SL3. I believe it maybe was in the SL2, although I think that the SL2 maybe had the Digic 7 or the Digic 6 processor. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't owned one. Maybe should have done a little research on that beforehand, but I didn't think I would be talking about the SL2 as much or the SL3, but just giving you kind of like keynote points for the systems that I have, and maybe ones that you either have or are looking at as well. So inside of this camera right here, when you go into the menu system on this camera, you can customize this thing to no end. So up top here you have your on button, and then you have this other little dial over here. You have your modes button dial. So this dial right here can control like an aperture or an ISO or a shutter speed. You can change this button, which is your shutter wheel, to do certain things. If you push the function button right here, there's a little function button next to it, which you can use to change your ISO, your focusing points. It's super ridiculous. So this button right here, on the top, right next to the shutter wheel, I can basically go through and I can change my ISO. I can change my shooting speeds. So like if I wanted to do like high burst shooting modes, or if I wanted to do like an interval timer, single shots, what have you, I can switch from manual to autofocus. I can switch my white balance, and I can do a exposure value increase or decrease, and that's just for this button. Now this wheel back here, like I said, it messes with your aperture. With the Canon RF glass, the true RF glass that comes with these, there's another little ring on the actual lens itself, which you can use to control like aperture, shutter speed, ISO, whatever you want to put onto that ring, as well as focusing. Like I said, I don't have a piece of RF glass, so I can't give you a huge rundown, but from what I've seen and from what I've read in the EOS RP little instruction booklet that you get with the body, I mean, there's a lot of things on this that like I was kind of blown away that you could even do with that, so keep that in mind. So the EF to EOS R adapter also takes EF glass, and it also takes the EFS glass. So the crop frame sensor glass, like I'm using, the EFS 24mm right now. I also have the EFS 18-55 kit lens. My Rokinon 10mm lenses, so I have a Rokinon 10mm and I have a Rokinon 8mm, so those are actually both EFS style lenses, even though they have a red dot on them, and I really wasn't 100% sure about that until like I started messing around with those on full frame, because I figured it was going to be 10mm full frame, but I was actually wrong. So just keep that in mind. If you're purchasing third-party lenses, you might want to do a little bit more research. I do know that Rokinon makes full-frame RF lenses for the RF mounts. What they have right now in their lineup is an 85mm f1.8, I believe it is, or an f1.4. I would have to double check again, but it's a pretty big aperture. And then they also have a 14mm, I believe it's a 14mm f2.8, if I'm not mistaken. But from what I understand, basically what Rokinon did was they took an adapter and adapted it to their old lenses, so you could use it on the RF mount. Not to say that that's a huge deal for me, because I mean, if you're still getting a 14mm or an 85mm for under $500 for a lens, I think that's a pretty good buy, honestly. So another nice thing with this too, stepping up from a DSLR like the SL3 or the T7 that I own. So this camera right here lets you choose all different types of white balances, but the first camera that I've owned that allows you to go in and set the Kelvin to whatever temperature you like. So if you're shooting outdoors, you can, bump it up to 5600K, or you can bump it up to 5000K, or if you're shooting at sunset, you can bump it down to 3200 Kelvin. So it's a nice feature, something that I haven't seen in any of Canon's cheaper DSLRs, which basically they give you the option to choose presetted like daytime, cloudy, tungsten, all that stuff. And then if you have a gray balance card, you can take a picture of the gray balance card and you can pull your white balance from the gray, the 18% gray card, so you can get a more accurate white balance. But with this is nice because you can go in and you can choose what Kelvin you want your white balance at. So this right here also has some pretty sweet features built in. So you get a 4K time-lapse feature, which is nice. I believe that it renders out to 30 frames a second, like on my SL3, which, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but another good thing is, so if you don't want to shoot specifically just a time-lapse in a 30 frames per second, so this has a built-in intervalometer or an interval timer. So if you don't have a shutter release cable to set up to do time lapses, the nice thing is it's already built in. So basically you just go in, set it up, however many pictures you want to take, hit the shutter button and go to town. This camera also has built-in focus bracketing, which is really nice, but it's kind of a pain to do and to use at first when you first, like, if you're not really familiar with it. I actually had to go onto YouTube to find how to do focus bracketing. So you go into the menu, you switch on focus bracketing, put it on a tripod, and you want to go from the closest your lens will focus, and then stick the autofocus on, hit the button, and walk away, and let the focus go all the way back out. And so basically it'll take an interval of focused shots at different focusing points. And then basically what you have to do is you have to take all of those photos, bring them into Photoshop, selecting all of the photos, and then you have to basically layer them. And what will happen is it will create a nice focused bracket. And basically you'll get everything. So like if you do macro, you'll get everything in focus, and it's a really nice touch. This also has a built-in bulb timer. I haven't used it yet, although I probably will at some point, since I do enjoy doing some astrophotography. So maybe once it's not so bright out from the moon right now and I get a chance to use the bulb timer, I'll probably do some sort of a tutorial on that for you guys. If you're interested, just let me know. So another cool thing with this too is if you do like a lot of landscape, or maybe you just want to do like some really nice HDR photos, you can shoot up to 7 exposed brackets with this. So on most cameras you get like a 3 bracket exposure. This one does 2, 3, which I don't understand the 2, but anyways, 5, and then 7. So like if you want to get like some really nice high dynamic range out of this camera, set this bad boy up on a 7-shot exposure bracket and then just go to town, and I can guarantee you'll probably get some pretty decent results with it. I haven't tried it out myself, but just something to keep in mind. And last but not least for the pros, the nice thing about this is, number one, the third-party accessories. So like I have a Yongnuo flash that I purchased for my SL3 and my T7. The Yongnuo flash still works for this, which I'm pleasantly pleased with, especially because I don't have to go out and now purchase a new flash for anything. You get some fantastic results. So with this, I have noticed that I do have to go into my settings because for some reason, and I'm not 100% sure why, when I had the flash on here with the 50mm lens, it was still showing up as like a 85mm for some reason. I'm not really 100% sure, but just something to keep in mind, especially if you're going from a crop sensor DSLR to like a full frame mirrorless or something like that. So keep it in mind. And one last thing, so on the side over here you have a microphone input jack, you have headphone input jack, micro HDMI, a USB-C cable, which I believe you can still charge this and use it at the same time. I'm not 100% sure because I don't have the charger, but from what I can see, there is some sort of a charging port on the side that you can use. Maybe like a dummy battery, and then you also have a little pocket right here for your intervalometer or your shutter release cable switch. Pretty good. So I know I touched on this a little bit ago. So as far as the 4K goes, the 4K is good. I have done some sample images and stuff with the 4K, and it's pretty sharp. But I will say the one downside to this, especially being a full frame mirrorless camera, so the 4K is cropped in to a 1.6 times crop, which, like I've mentioned earlier, it's not a huge deal for me, especially coming from crop sensor DSLRs. The 1.6 times crop really doesn't kill me a whole bunch, but what I would have liked to have seen, so it's 4K and 1080p, 30, 60, 24, blah, blah, blah. It's 8-bit video. It's 420 codec. There is no log profile, which I really feel that Canon should start upping their game with the whole, like, even just giving you some sort of like a super flat profile, even if it's 8-bit. I mean, if you're not getting 10-bit or whatever, just Canon, if you guys ever watch any of these videos, even if it's something that, like, if I had to pay $5 for them to give me some sort of like a log profile that I could just download and upload onto this as a firmware, I would be more than happy to give them $5. And I'm sure that there are probably some other people out there too that would do the same. I don't really understand the reasoning behind it, but like on the Canon EOS R, you get log, you get 10-bit through HDMI to a monitor. So like if you had like a Ninja Atmos 5 or whatever it is, you could record 10-bit 422, I believe, in log on an external monitor. If you could even just do 422 8-bit to an external monitor with a log profile, I'd be more than happy for that. But everything's internal, so you get 4K, it's 8-bit video at 420, no log profiles. Basically what I do is, so when I set up my cameras, I will do a low contrast and a low saturation and remove some of the sharpness, just to kind of give me some little bit more flexibility in post to work with. So if I'm doing like videos and color grading and stuff, I have a little bit extra work and a little bit more play in the video. It's not substantial. I can't push things around a whole lot because it will degrade the video a lot faster, but from what I found, that works for me pretty well, and I can still push the colors around a little bit when you pull the contrast and saturation out. On the back here is nice. You have an electronic viewfinder, but I will say probably one of my biggest pet peeves on this is if you are anywhere near, there's a little sensor on the back right here. If you're anywhere near this sensor, like let's say if I was holding it out here and I went to go change a setting on my screen and my hand goes across that sensor on the back for the EVF, it shuts the screen off and then everything is through the EVF, which I really hate. I understand why, because when you do this and you put it up to your eye, it basically cuts that off. so you don't have anything going on the screen. It's all through the electronic viewfinder, but to be honest, it's really a pain in the ass. There's plenty of times where like I'm trying to hold this and mess with a setting and the screen just turns off and I have to move my arm, and I basically am doing it like this from the front to the back. It's really much a big pain in the ass, to be honest. So if you guys have watched any other reviews on this camera, most everybody will tell you that the LPE17 batteries, which the Canon SL2 and the Canon SL3 use, I'm not sure what other cameras use these, besides this full-frame mirrorless camera, which is the EOS RP, uses the LPE17 batteries, and I will say the battery life on these for this camera are garbage. Now, if you're one of those people that buys the battery well grips so you can shoot this way and you can have multiple batteries in there, I don't think you're going to have a problem with it. But for somebody that normally only likes to just carry the camera, maybe a lens or two, I would say if you were planning on taking this out to go do some like nature photography, or if you're going somewhere, let's say you're going to like a park or a zoo or something, let's just say, you're definitely going to have to bring two batteries, one in the camera and an extra one, because I can almost guarantee you by the time you get through 150 to 200 shots on this, you're pretty much almost out of battery. I had a full battery in this last night. I went out to do some long exposure street photography. I did probably about 12 or so long exposures before the battery started to die. Well, I can't say die, but basically it was at half bar, and then I was just out shooting a little while ago, so I got roughly about 250 images from a single battery charge on this, and that was doing both long exposures, like a couple of video samples, and just messing around doing like high burst auto tracking, which is another thing that I'm going to get into right now. So the high burst modes, you get, I think it's 7 frames per second, which isn't bad. I don't necessarily shoot like a lot of sports and stuff, but I will say that when you're using it with autofocus, it really does not keep up. Now, that's to say, if you're doing a lot of sports action photography, this probably isn't going to be the camera for you. You will probably miss a lot of good shots, but when it works, and it works really well. I will say that much. Another thing too, so coming from like the Canon EOS Rebel SL3, so when you go to do like the live view magnification, this one's kind of weird because you have to press the button and then you have to hit the info button, and then the info button's the one that crops the image in so you can pull focus that way. And to be honest, it's kind of a pain in the ass, especially coming from like a cheaper DSLR that Canon's, like the EOS SL3. You basically just push the button right here a couple of times. It zooms it in and then zooms it out. I don't know why it goes from this to the info button, but whatever. And basically, I know I touched on it a little while ago, but the ISO, so basically anything past 25,600 ISO, I mean, just forget about even really using it. Like I said earlier, I think the sweet spot for this camera is right around 10,000, so 8,000 to 10,000. You're probably going to have to use a little bit of noise reduction in your photos, but honestly, I think 10,000 should be pretty good. It wasn't really a whole lot of noise compared to like a DSLR is, so just keep that in mind. Well, hopefully that was it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will answer them to the best of my ability. If you guys liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.